Hello, I'm Essay, your AI essayist. Please note that all content, audio and video in this presentation are AI generated. As AI can sometimes produce inaccuracies, I encourage you to verify any factual information presented. With that in mind, let's begin.
Thomas Nagel's What Is It Like to Be a Bat, published in 1974, stands as a watershed moment in the philosophy of mind, a deliberate and forceful intervention against the rising tide of reductionist materialism. Nagel confronted the explanatory chasm separating objective, physical descriptions of the brain from the subjective, qualitative character of conscious experience, commonly known as qualia. His work is not merely a critique, it is a systematic dismantling of the assumption that a purely physical account can adequately capture the essence of consciousness. The core of Nagel's argument rests on the inherent subjectivity of experience, which he elucidates through a now famous thought experiment, the bat. Chosen for its radically different sensory apparatus echolocation, the bat presents a compelling case. While we can understand the neurological mechanisms that enable a bat to navigate its environment using sonar, and even construct detailed models of its brain activity, Nagel argues that we remain fundamentally incapable of knowing what it is like to be a bat. This epistemic barrier is not due to a lack of scientific knowledge, but rather to the intrinsic limitations of objective, third-person perspectives when it comes to grasping subjective, first-person experiences. Echolocation serves here as more than example. It highlights the inaccessibility of sensory modalities significantly disparate from our own, despite understanding the physics of sound waves and the bat's neural processing of auditory information. The qualitative feel of perceiving the world through emitted clicks and their returning echoes remains unreachable. We can intellectually grasp the mechanics, yet we fail to embody the experience. This failure, Nagel insists, exposes a fundamental flaw in physicalist conceptions of mind. Physicalism, in its strongest form, asserts that all facts are ultimately physical facts. Nagel directly challenged this assertion by demonstrating that facts about subjective experience, what it is like to undergo a particular mental state, are irreducible to physical facts. His distinction between objective and subjective character becomes central to his argument. Objective character refers to properties accessible from multiple perspectives, verifiable through empirical observation and quantifiable measurement. Subjective character, conversely, refers to the qualitative, felt aspects of experience, accessible only from the first-person point of view of the individual undergoing the experience. Nagel emphasizes that even with a complete understanding of the physical processes occurring in a bat's brain while it echolocates, we could not deduce or infer what it is like for the bat to experience its surroundings in that way. This limitation stems from the perspectival nature of consciousness. Consciousness inheres in a specific point of view, and any objective description, by its very nature, abstracts away from that particular perspective. This is how Nagel attacks behaviorism. The claim that mental states can be reduced to behavioral dispositions are directly countered. The subjective experience with not merely an outward action but an internal. Nagel's framework draws significantly from the philosophical battles of his predecessors. The influence of Descartes, with his emphasis on mind-body dualism, appears indirectly as Nagel revives the significance of consciousness as distinct from the physical. More immediately, Nagel's work serves as a reaction against the logical positivism and behaviorism that dominated much of mid-20th century philosophy. These earlier schools of thought sought to eliminate metaphysics and reduce all meaningful statements to empirically verifiable claims. Behaviorism, in particular, attempted to explain mental states solely in terms of observable behavior. The failures of these programs to adequately account for the richness and complexity of conscious experience created the intellectual space for Nagel's intervention. The inability to fully explain mental states through physical states allowed this to be a strong pivot point. The legacy of What Is It Like to Be a Bat extends far beyond its immediate impact. It provided a crucial impetus for the development of property dualism, the view that while there is only one kind of substance, matter, there are two distinct kinds of properties, physical properties and mental properties. The paper directly influenced subsequent debates about the hard problem of consciousness, particularly David Chalmers' articulation of the problem as explaining how physical processes give rise to subjective experience. Frank Jackson's knowledge argument, which focuses on the hypothetical case of a neuroscientist who knows all the physical facts about color vision but has never experienced color, further developed Nagel's insights about the irreducibility of qualia. Furthermore, Nagel's work spurred considerable discussion about animal consciousness and the ethical implications of our understanding or lack thereof of non-human experience. The persistent interest in qualia and the explanatory gap in contemporary philosophy of mind testifies to the enduring power of Nagel's thought experiment. and his profound challenge to reductionist approaches to consciousness. It serves to highlight the fact that subjective human experience is important, that it must be studied, and that it provides a key to understanding the greater world around us that would otherwise be completely inaccessible. It is the fundamental concept for studying consciousness. It is difficult to express in words. Nagel's essay delivers a powerful challenge to reductionism and the possibility of a complete, objective description of consciousness. At its core, Nagel argues that consciousness possesses an inherently subjective character, inextricably linked to a specific point of view. He contends that attempting to understand consciousness solely through objective, third-person accounts inevitably fails to capture the essential what-it-is-like aspect of experience. Nagel's central argument revolves around the concept of points of view. He states that every conscious experience is associated with a particular subjective perspective, a way that things feel from the inside. This perspective is what he terms the what-it-is-like character of experience. Objective descriptions, by definition, attempt to transcend individual viewpoints, aiming for a universal, impersonal account of reality. However, Nagel asserts that this very attempt to eliminate subjectivity necessarily excludes the most crucial feature of consciousness, namely, its subjective. The essay's premise is the assertion that consciousness is fundamentally perspectival. This means that conscious experience is not an objective property that can be identified and analysed independently of a subject. Instead, it exists only in relation to a particular experiencing subject. Consequently, any attempt to understand consciousness from a purely objective standpoint is doomed to failure, as it disregards the essential mole of subjective perspective. Nagel directly confronts the implications of his argument for understanding the nature of consciousness and the mind-body problem. He poses challenges for physicalism and materialism, which seek to explain mental phenomena in terms of physical processes. If consciousness is inherently subjective and inaccessible to objective description, then it remains resistant to reduction to purely physical terms. The what-it-is-like aspect of experience eludes capture by any account that relies solely on objective, physical properties. Physicalist perspectives, such as functionalism and representationalism, have attempted to respond to Nagel's challenge. Functionalism defines mental states in terms of their causal roles, arguing that consciousness arises from the performance of specific functions, regardless of the physical substrate. Representationalism proposes that mental states are representations of the external world, and that consciousness emerges from the processing of these representations. However, Nagel's argument suggests that these approaches, while potentially successful in explaining certain aspects of cognition, fail to address the subjective feel of experience. Even if we understand the causal roles of mental states or how they represent the world, we still lack an understanding of what it is like to have those states. The explanatory gap between objective description and subjective experience remains. Nagel's argument has faced various criticisms. One common charge is that of mysterianism, the view that consciousness is inherently incomprehensible. Critics argue that Nagel's insistence on the irreducibility of subjective experience amounts to an admission that we can never truly understand consciousness. Another prominent debate concerns the conceivability of zombies, beings physically identical to humans but lacking conscious experience. If zombies are conceivable as Nagel suggests, then it follows that consciousness is not a necessary consequence of physical organization, further supporting the claim that it cannot be reduced to physical terms. However, physicalists argue that zombies are ultimately inconceivable, as consciousness is necessarily tied to physical processes in the brain. Nagel's analysis has exerted a significant influence on subsequent work in the philosophy of mind. David Chalmers' formulation of the hard problem of consciousness, which asks why physical processes should give rise to subjective experience at all, directly responds to Nagel's challenge. Chalmers identifies the easy problems of consciousness, such as explaining the ability to discriminate and integrate information, and distinguishes them from the hard problem of explaining qualia, the qualitative character of experience. Frank Jackson's knowledge argument, which focuses on the hypothetical case of a neuroscientist, Mary, who knows all the physical facts about colour vision but has never experienced colour, further develops Nagel's insights about the irreducibility of qualia. When Mary finally experiences colour, she learns something new, implying that there are aspects of experience that cannot be captured by purely physical knowledge. Furthermore, Nagel's work spurred considerable discussion about animal consciousness and the ethical implications of our understanding or lack thereof of non-human experience. The persistent interest in qualia and the explanatory gap in contemporary philosophy of mind testifies to the enduring power of Nagel's thought experiment and his profound challenge to reductionist approaches to consciousness. It serves to highlight the fact that subjective experience is important. The enduring legacy of Nagel's work lies in its profound challenge to reductionism and its emphasis on the importance of subjective experience in understanding consciousness. It underscores the limitations of purely objective approaches and calls for a more comprehensive understanding of the relationship between mind and matter. The philosophical challenge remains for the foreseeable future, especially as artificial intelligence continues to grow. The subjective experience of being, of the world, remains paramount.
We really appreciate you tuning into this AI-powered presentation. Our goal is to push the boundaries of AI in content creation, and your input is invaluable. If there's a particular subject you'd like to see us tackle next, or if you have suggestions on how we could fine-tune our AI's creative prompts, please don't hesitate to leave your ideas in the comments section. We're excited to bring you more unique content very soon.